Okay, yeah. So, hello everyone, and hello to all of our wonderful L2 crew, and anyone who is currently watching this. It's good to see the greater Ethereum verse come together again. As I guess we've done this before in person at Dev Connect, and we're doing this one online. So looking forward to seeing these kinds of amazing cross L2 chats become a regular thing. So I think we'll start off with just a fairly simple question to any team that wants to answer it for themselves, which is just from a technical perspective, whether it's decentralization or functionality or whatever else. What milestones are many of you particularly excited about your project reaching in 2024? Anyone start? Yeah.
I can start if you want.
Perfect.
Or mine. I mean, my main battle. Our main battle here for decentralization is forced transactions. I mean, it's a little bit disgusting in my side that we have this Starknet and it could be enabled from the first day, and it's still not enabled. It's mainly for security, mainly much for security reasons. I mean, the problem of forced transactions. The forced transactions can be anything that can be a forced transaction. So this opens very much the vector space. But the good news is that what we are going to do in the next version is we're going to enable that, but we are going to limit the forced transactions just to withdraw transactions. I mean, this is just not the perfect thing, but this reduce a lot the vector space for that. So this allows us to enable that. And with that, I mean, it's not so forced transactions. And here is maybe a philosophical discussion. I mean, it's not a perfect thing, because I think the goal of these decentralized systems is not to build. It's not only censorship resistance. I would say I like more the concept of universal systems, systems that anybody can use it. And with forced transactions, actually nobody can steal your funds. You can always recover that, but you effectively, what you can do is you have the right to kick somebody out of the network. And this is not really what I like the best. So I think it's better than a fully centralized system. But this is the main step that we are fighting for, and let's see if we can enable that. I mean, as soon as possible. I don't want to promise nothing at this point, but yeah, it's as soon as possible. It's just a matter of getting confidence on that.
Okay.
I'm happy to go next.
Sure.
What I'm really excited about this year is that this is going to be the year where the zkSync decentralizes. And I believe that decentralization of L2s is a really big topic, where we still have a lot of centralized components with centralized sequencers, centralized provers. Security councils are not in the perfect shape, and their credibility, like all of those things, we really need to polish them to bring the promise of actually scaling Ethereum with all of its values in the L2 space. And what I'm really excited in the zkSync's decentralization roadmap is that we'll have many chains powered by zkSync. We call them hyperchains. They should be connected in the hyperbridging network, which I believe eventually is something that we will all converge in the L2 space, that the bridgeability between all L2s have to be completely seamless and trustless. And we just want to pioneer that with the zk technology. And I think that zk is really a crucial component there. And I'm really excited that we can accomplish that with decentralizing, not at the level of a single sequencer and then doing something like shared sequencing for multiple chains that will mean that all of them are using the same providers and kind of like getting the power together, but actually like truly decentralizing, that many different teams can run many different versions of consensus, of different protocols to aggregate proofs, etc. and all of them still inherit full security and trustless properties of Ethereum and censorship resistance down from layer 1. So this is the design space that we're super excited about.
Got it. Anyone want to go next?
I can go next.
Sure.
I think for us and for me personally, what excites me the most is the steps that we're taking towards removing the multi-sig, or like just having delayed upgradability without having any protocol capacity of instant upgradability. And we just announced the first step towards it. It's we announced an SGX-based multi-prover that is going to go live on the mainnet soon. And I'm not sure if we're going to be able to actually remove the multi-sig this year. It's still quite risky, but we're taking steps towards it. And the multi-prover is a good first step. And a side effect of like actually having a multi-prover is that we can easily decentralize. And that's also going to happen. We're planning for this to happen later this year. So we're working towards decentralization. But it's going to be a side effect of the fact that we're trying to improve the security.
Got it. Maybe two people who have not gone yet, just a question in a completely different direction, right? So I think we're excited about layer 2s because layer 2s scale Ethereum, and scaling Ethereum reduces fees and enables other applications. So what are some particular applications that you guys are excited about becoming possible that haven't been possible on Ethereum so far?
Yeah, happy to maybe jump in.
Sure.
Here. Yeah, I mean, I think, and maybe I can even loop this back into the previous question and get 2 in 1. I think that kind of the like one of the things I think that we're seeing a bunch of is sort of a lot of innovation in blockchain gaming, which has sort of historically been an area that's been quite bottlenecked on capacity, on functionality, in terms of kind of actually being able to have real experiences, and like the combination of kind of a number of things that sort of we're working on and excited about in the next year. One of which is sort of Arbitrum orbit chains and the proliferation of essentially kind of Ethereum dApp chains, and kind of the concept of sort of dedicated capacity. Certainly 4844, and also sort of other interesting exploration in Alt-DA in order to lower costs enough in order to sort of actually have these things be feasible. And then work we're doing on Arbitrum stylus to enable WASM execution and kind of get computational requirements down, and allow kind of game developers to kind of come in and use languages that they're more used to, and kind of depend on libraries that might not already exist in Ethereum because they're not that useful for kind of existing applications, and sort of all of those things coming together to form sort of a perfect mix of what's needed to enable new functionality.
Amazing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're trying to kind of like enable is privacy, so that you can easily have a kind of privacy preserving smart contracts, and like don't have to expose your balances and all that. So that's one of the things. And more broadly on privacy is just like off-chain transactions, meaning where you can prove in using a zkP that the transaction was executed correctly, and then just send the zkP to the network so that the network can verify it. And that enables, well, this is needed for privacy because you need to prove local state transitions for privacy purposes, but also may enable scalability, where you can execute some very complex code on the client side, prove it, and then send it to the network, and then the network that just needs to verify a short proof that it worked correctly.
Yeah, I'm actually bummed. I think since a lot of people listening to this probably know about Polygon as basically a set of EVM clone chains, but you're working on some pretty different stuff around privacy. So maybe just like introduce what is the thing that you're working on, like what kinds of technology it's being used, how it fits into the Polygon universe in general.
Yeah, so I think Polygon Mining is one of the kind of components of Polygon overall. It will, I think we announced this aggregation layer yesterday, and this is something that we will be one of the chains that plugs into this aggregation layer. But the nice thing about the aggregation layer is that it doesn't have to be all EVM chains. It could be different chains that use different execution environments and have different properties. So one of the things that we're trying to solve with Polygon mining specifically is, we're using a different state model from Ethereum specifically to enable privacy as one of the things, but also make parallel transaction execution more kind of more naturally workable, enable this off-chain transaction execution, as I mentioned, and a bunch of other things. And the way we do it is, as I mentioned, but changing how the state works. So we're doing a hybrid between UTXO and account-based state model. So you kind of have, the benefits of both accounts and UTXOs, where, to make transactions, for example, to transfer assets between two accounts, you actually have two transactions where one transaction creates a UTXO and another transaction consumes a UTXO, and that allows you to decouple kind of like updates to one account from updates to another account, and that makes like a local state transition locally provable. So this is like, changing the state model is one of the bigger things, and like that enables, as I mentioned, both privacy and other interesting things. And with this aggregation layer, we will be able to prove execution of Polygon mining, put it to the aggregation layer. Then this will get rolled up with a EVM-based chains together in a single proof, and that proof, zk proof, will go to Ethereum. So it's a pretty exciting concept of how this all can come together.
Amazing, thank you. Ellie, I feel like we haven't heard from you yet. What's exciting in Starkware land, and what applications do you want to see?
So I think the thing that I'm most eagerly awaiting is the good UX that would come from applications building on Starknet that are using the native account abstraction that is common to all Starknet addresses, which would mean that users will get a much better UX that will feel, it already feels very Web 2-like and familiar. Those who install things like the Bravos or Argent wallets already feel this. So the main thing I think will be that the UX will look much nicer for users on Starknet, which will enable a lot more, adoption by others who are not right now crypto savvy. And this will be coupled with the enhanced performance in terms of throughput and low costs. Also, thanks a lot to 4844, which is soon coming. And, congrats on yet another delivery that is going to impact us all in a positive way. So the main thing I would say is applications making cool new use of account abstraction and better UX, enabling totally new things. Now, what these things are going to be, I don't know, but I'm eagerly awaiting, Influence, the Nekubo, and the other very cool applications who are at the vanguard of this movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Nicholas, what's your take on both of these?
Yeah, so for zk rollups, there's still the compression that we're gonna add, and basically it's a fight for cost and transaction prices, and it's not a fight that is over. So compression allows to divide the price by 5. Usually that's pretty good just for cold data. 4844 is incredibly important. I think it's not going to be the end of the story. I think this data is going to be used very quickly. So we will need an extended number of blobs or more solutions, something like in a year or two. So I think we should anticipate this. And once we will get there, which is basically very low transaction prices, a lot of use cases will open. I totally agree on account abstraction and on UX. I think it's absolutely key. And UX is actually linked to security as well. Sometimes in order to save, you either go too fast. Sometimes you could actually, I've seen some patterns like you authorize the access and you do your transaction and then you remove the access. A lot of things are linked to the transaction prices and would be quite important in terms of UX and security, in my opinion.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, so let's move on to another theme that I think is really important, which is customization versus standardization, right? So I think the various layer 2s here have a lot of things in common in not all but most cases. The EVM, in many forms of cryptography, a connection to Ethereum, potentially other things. But at the same time, all of you guys are exploring different ways to extend the functionality that you're providing to your users. And so how do you see the balance between like extension and standardization being? Like, what are some things that are particularly important to standardize, and what are some areas where like you're personally excited about your project uniquely innovating on?
I can start on this one. Oh, okay. The way we see it, we would like to be as standardized as possible. That's as much as we can. So we would really like the EVM to continue to evolve, not to be stuck in a logic where, okay, actually everybody diverges in different way. And if we don't have to, we will follow the protocol exactly as it is.
I agree with this, but I also think that it's our job to innovate and try things out that will then later be implementable for Ethereum itself and for all layer 2s, because if we, it's too risky to do all of the experiments on layer 1 because of the massive responsibility of the basis chain. We are, on the other hand, are much more free to try things out, and if they don't work, then they don't work, right? So the one thing zkSync has done was native account abstraction. I think we're the only EVM L2 that has native account abstraction, and it really leads to much better UX, where you can pay in different tokens. In the end, we will convert all of these fees into ETH and automatically, programmatically, so that we can pay for the for gas for the block space on Ethereum, but the end user should not be bothered with that. And it also enables things like multi-call, and this leads to much better UX, to much better security, because all of a sudden you can construct protocols that make it very visible, very clear to the users what are going to be the impacts of their action. Like when I'm signing a transaction, I should not be worried that this transaction can steal all of my funds from the wallet. And the only way to do it is to go away from the infinite approvals and things like this, and actually like create strong invariants which can be enforced by account abstraction, which has to be implemented natively. So that's one example, and we'll see more examples where I think we should innovate, and then before we innovate, we should obviously coordinate. And we have the really nice coordination channels. We have the rollup improvement proposal group. We have these chats. I think we should be using them really, really heavily, but still be courageous to innovate, try new things.
Got it.
I think for us, our goal is first and foremost to maximize compatibility with Ethereum. So we want to be as compatible with EVM as possible and with Ethereum code base in general. And then from there, there's nothing stopping us from adding features on top of it that Ethereum or EVM doesn't have. So as long as we support the standard features that EVM has, we can extend them and add features that EVM doesn't have. But for now, we're focusing on compatibility with EVM and Ethereum. And then once we achieve that, we're going to move on to experimentation and adding things that EVM doesn't have, or possibly isn't considering, Ethereum isn't considering adding for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. One specific thing to zoom in on, the state tree hash function, right? So for the ZK rollups here, what are you guys using? Like, are you cloning the L1, or do you have some ZK friendly thing at the moment?
We use Poseidon.
Poseidon, okay. And Linea?
MIMC.
MIMC and
with a
Jordi?
complicated logic.
Jordi?
We are using
Poseidon too with Goldilocks.
Okay.
We're using Rescue, so yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I think this one interesting question here is that the Ethereum L1 is currently actively planning to move to Virtual trees because we care about reducing witness sizes. And I think one question here that I wonder if it's worth thinking through is do we think it's the goal for both L1 and every L2 to eventually converge to one particular snark-friendly state tree design, or might you see legitimate reasons for different systems to diverge on this in the long term?
I think it would be good to have the same tree across. I mean, this will simplify a lot of things on that. I'm not sure if this should be Patricia Try on there, but I mean, maybe Berkeley trees is an option there. Here it's important to mention that the proving systems, they are evolving a lot, and things that were not, I mean, doing something that was not Poseidon or some hash-friendly function at some point was like impossible or difficult to think about or hard to do. But every time we see that more things are possible. So thinking currently, for example, thinking in vertical trees that's using a good prime field, even it's a big one, but it's a good prime field. It's not, it doesn't look like a bad option. I mean, there are options, and I think here that the evolution of the zero knowledge can change a little bit on what's the best thing. At this point, I would say that most of the projects that choose something that it's to build. I mean, it's something that works. Okay, but maybe now it starts. We can start thinking about being a little bit more flexible here and unifying the tree, the state tree.
Yeah, I want to say on this that like we will always be using the most efficient proving technology that there is, especially on the scaling side. And everything points towards the very small fields. So to that extent, I mean, you know, as we do with the KZG blobs, we can use them and we adopt. But to the extent that standards will also support a number of fields, and especially small fields, I think that would be far better from the point of use of scaling, just because you get the big bottleneck is the prover, and the prover, you get much more efficiency over small fields. So be it vertical tree or something else, like going with a 381-bit field or even a 256-bit field will be much less efficient, you know, mathematically and engineering than using a small field. Now we'll work with, you know, as we were working with KPG, we'll work with anything that is a standard, but you know, if the standard could be open to things that also support small fields, you'll just get very much better efficiency, you know, by 2 to 3 orders of magnitude.
So with like these zk constructions in general, I mean, I remember back in you know, the good old days when I was visiting ULE up in Haifa, and you were explaining a lot of this stuff you know, to me for the first time. There were like basically a couple of zk protocols out there, but now you know, we have all of these distinctions of like, you know, is it KZG, is it IPA based, is it Stark? Are we are we using Halo? Are the Stark's Goldilocks field? Are they binary field? Are we like doing some lookup singularity thing? You know, so do you guys see this space stabilizing anytime soon? Like, do you think 5 years from now, at least you know, the sane engineers among us will be able to look each other in the eye, agree that, like, you know, we all agree that this thing is best? Or do you think we'll continue having you know, like 10 different dueling constructions for a long time?
I think we'll have a lot of dueling constructions, but I do think that along certain parameters, especially if you look at numeric things, stuff will dominate. So it's going to be very hard to get a single proof with smaller byte size than, you know, a Groth 16, right? So maybe it could go down by factor 2 or something, but it's very close to optimal. I think that in terms of proving time, some construction that uses either univariate or very small variate fields over polynomials of a very small field will probably have fastest proving time. And then, so I guess, let's see, what would be a good analogy? If you think about sorting algorithms, right, there's no end to, there will always be more sorting algorithms, but there's a small number of very popular ones. None of them is, the very best along every dimension, but there is a very small number of them, and they're well-known trade-offs. So I think, I don't know if in 5 years, maybe in 20 years, will be something like that, where, yeah, there's always ongoing research about all kinds of problems, but along several important parameters, there'll be sort of consensus as to the tools at hand that work best.
Okay. Any other?
I think,
yeah, go ahead, Bobin.
Yeah, I think probably within 5 years is the right time frame, but not because people will stop innovating, but because I think making frequent changes or significant changes will matter less. I think we're almost on the verge where proving is fast enough or good enough for most purposes, where it doesn't make sense to change it every year or every 2 years. I think from a cost perspective, we're basically there where, at least in the blockchain context, the proving costs are almost negligible compared to all other costs. Like from latency standpoint, we still have some ways to go and things like that. But I think within 5 years, we'll get to the point where people will say, okay, this proving system is good enough. I don't need to change it next year because it doesn't really make a material difference to the overall system design. Obviously, people will keep innovating and maybe we'll change things more slowly. But I do think we're kind of almost on the verge where like the proving cost and speed doesn't matter anymore.
I agree with Bobby, and I just want to add that I believe it's really important to standardize on the vertical tree design that is compatible with zk efficiency, and that we can all then embrace and make it a lot easier to build type 1 zk VMs. That we can then you can use all of the L2 projects that as basically light clients for main one, for layer 1. And yes, on the efficiency side, we are at zkSync, we are using SHA-256. We're not using Poseidon, we're not using MEMC, we're not using any algebraic hash functions, because even though SHA-256 is slightly more expensive, we're currently the lowest cost rollup, the cheapest zk VM on Ethereum. So it doesn't really matter because the proving is negligible.
Okay. So I think just zooming out a bit from some of the math, just for the readers who are a bit overwhelmed by the weeds here. It sounds like lots of amazing tech is still rapidly ongoing, but we value standardization, but it'll happen over time as the years pass by and as we flip over more cards and discover what technologies are waiting, we'll start to converge on being able to standardize more and more.
I'd really like to. I haven't heard anything from Kelvin, and I'd like to hear.
Yeah.
Yes, the Optimism zk. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I gotta be fed a question to answer.
A bit actually. How about we'll go into probably like one of your favorite topics, and also something that's I think probably of interest to lots of others in the L2 ecosystem as well, which is how do you see L2's role in funding common infrastructure across the Ethereum ecosystem?
Oh boy. I would say I think we have to. This is a personal opinion, but I think this is one of the big things that's missing from L1, something that it's hard to implement on L1. Obviously, it's a very challenging problem, but that doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't mean it's not missing. And ultimately, I think that it is sort of the L2 responsibility to fund these things, because nobody else is, right? That's sort of the fundamental problem.
It's, anyone else wants to give their thoughts on that?
I just agree with what Kelvin said.
Okay. Amazing.
Definitely agree. Also, I mean, I think it's interesting in that like it's a very hard problem, and I think that like trying to like figure out sort of experimentation and sort of resistance to capture is really hard. It's very cool watching what the Optimism Collective has been doing there, just because I know there's iteration, and that it's not an easy one to crack, but it's one that's extremely high value, and in general, kind of like, I think, at least from my perspective, the thing that's sort of most valuable now is sort of exploring a heterogeneous set of kind of different possible mechanisms, just because how hard it is to actually know how these things will play out and evolve in practice.
Yeah, I think maybe even the mental model on my end is that it's not just necessary, it's in a lot of ways fundamental to what we're trying to achieve, right? We talk a lot about the technology, but if we just build this technology where the only people that can fund it are people with an enormous amount of capital, then we've sort of just created the same system again, right? If we can't fund our own infrastructure in a communal manner, then how can we really run communal infrastructure? So yeah, I see it as fundamental to the goal.
Okay. Maybe a different kind of question, but still in a similar spirit, right? So, this is the L2 peace panel, and, ideally we want to go a step beyond the sort of cold piece of not having Twitter wars with each other, and, also have a warm piece of lots of amazing collaborations. So maybe anyone interested, maybe just like share a concrete story of like what is a place on which you or your team have collaborated with someone else on this call and gotten a really good outcome out of that.
I'm not going to share details yet, but we have a very, very cool collaboration with Polygon 0, and I'll say no more.
Okay.
I can say some public things. For example, we are collaborating, for example, with Linea. We are building a zkWasm together. I mean, they're using the order remediation system and the proving system that we have, and we are collaborating together. And especially all the proving systems and the language and all the tools. I mean, I think this is a good example. I mean, when we're building the zkVM, building zkVM is mainly building tooling and building the tooling for building the zkVM. So all this tooling can be used for many other projects and many other things. And what we are trying in Polygon is try to open this tooling and so that the community can use, improve, get better, even audit the prover. So it's it's in our own interest, but it's in the interest of the community to having this tooling as extended as possible. And I think this is the spirit of the collaboration. I mean, you are taking a lot from the community, you are giving a lot to the community, or you are giving everything to the community. And this is the way to really progress and really go fast and innovate and getting results and getting adoption faster on this.
There was a great effort a number of months ago that was led by Yoav Weiss and pulled in, I think, a good number of the L2 teams to enable this interface ETH send raw transaction conditional, which is sort of a key enabler of a good 4337 experience on L2s, which was awesome, and definitely an area that benefited a lot from standardization in that we want to have all the wallets work on all the chains, and I think that it was a really valuable movement.
If I may, I wonder if we could invite Abdel on the show, because like in collaboration stories, like probably 99% of the collaboration stories of Starknet with other cool projects, originated in his mind or in discussions he had. So I don't know if he can come on and like share a few cool collaborative stories. I don't know if he's I know he's lurking in the somewhere in one of the areas of this. I mean, he was, Abdel, can you hear us? Can you come online and share some stories? There we go. Okay.
I was not too far. Yes. Yeah, briefly. Hi. Hello, everyone. Yeah. First of all, yeah. You hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, first of all, I really like to collaborate with everyone. So I welcome everyone here to reach out to me to do some kind of collaboration. I wish to do more collaboration with other L2s. But yeah, in general, we do a lot of collaboration also with other DA layer like Celestia, Veil. We also did some work with Linea, but it's not directly for the public Starknet, but more for app chains and layer 3s to be able to support multiple DA layers and so on. By the way, I want to shoot out Optimism because we use ProxyD in production. So ProxyD is a tool from Optimism to do load balancing on RPC requests, and we use it in production, and it helps us to improve the liveness of the network. So this is also a way of collaborating using other people tooling, etc. And we want to contribute to it, contribute back, and eventually discuss about making it a standalone product. And why not adding compatibility with non-EVM L2s like Starknet and so on. So yeah, generally speaking, I love to collaborate with everyone, and I wish we could do that more because I agree it's very important. As Nicolas said, standardization is also very important. And even if Starknet is not EVM compatible, there are many other aspects other than the execution engine that we can standardize and collaborate together. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. One other, I think, specific standardization topic that's worth kind of digging in just a little bit, account abstraction, right? So it's becoming a bigger and bigger topic. We're starting to see more and more of these AA wallets. And especially as we're seeing like different native AA implementations, we're starting to see different VMs become available in some cases. How are you guys thinking through like making it friendly to account abstraction while it's being able to deploy like on all of these all of the layer 2s, including yours simultaneously?
As a fully compatible zkVM, we are all in the 4337. That's so we are growing together here.
Okay. Yeah.
Same for us.
I'd be interested to hear from someone who is not in the sort of uncompromisingly 100% EVM camp.
For us, as I said, we support native account abstraction, but we follow the conventions of 4337. So it's compatible, but just can do more because you can natively execute code. Like for example, MetaMask wallets can enjoy account abstraction, not only the wallets that are smart contract based.
Okay.
I would answer,
example, if you want.
I wanted to say I would answer, but Abdel is going to do such a better job. So,
So a few examples. So on the gaming vertical that is very strong on Starknet, we have some builders who are using session keys because, of course, if you have an on-chain game, you don't want to sign each individual transactions. So they implemented some session key mechanism where you can use some session keys for the duration of the game. But of course, it's limited to a specific context, like it can interact only with a specific contracts, only with a specific selector, and so on. That's one example. Another example is, of course, Paymaster. And we will extend the native account abstraction to also have non-subtraction that will enable to send multiple transactions in parallel without having to execute them sequentially. Another aspect which we start to explore is social finance wallets and social recovery wallets that can be very powerful with native account abstraction. And a very cool example is Cartridge. They implemented a wallet that you can, an account that you can control by unlocking your Face ID on your iPhone. So it's totally seedless. You don't have any seed phrase. So you just unlock your Face ID and you interact with your smart contract.
Oh, interesting. I mean, in that case, where are the underlying keys stored?
But in the secure element of the phone, basically. Yeah, it's using the curve on the iPhone and implemented the verification logic in Cairo. Okay. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, amazing.
We have a similar example on zkSync with Clave, where they use the passkeys for basically just like sending a link which anyone
Amazing.
can click on and onboard in one click, just using your Face ID.
And you also have paymaster examples on zkSync. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, this is lovely. I feel like we should be having some account abstraction wallet piece calls too at some point soon. And I mean, I know like Blockto did a good job of doing an event at ECC, and I hope we're going to start seeing more and more of those. One of the kind of L2 Twitter war topics that we've seen over the past couple of months is people arguing what is and isn't a real rollup, or what is and isn't a layer 2, particularly with an eye to data availability strategies. And like, I feel like I've tried to kind of keep the peace on this, because like my view is that like different strategies are just make sense for different applications, and like $10 million DeFi does not need the exact same quality of data availability as like some like relatively tiny game. But from I guess like each of your perspectives, I mean, I know actually, many people here are increasingly offering both a roll-up and some kind of offering with an on-chain data availability strategy. Or off-chain data. So how do you guys see the distinction between like different data availability approaches? What kinds of applications each ones are appropriate to, and how you expect that to evolve in your ecosystem in the future?
So when it comes to data availability, I'm always more comfortable when it goes to basically Ethereum, because it makes the security analysis much simpler. There's a single dependency. You don't have multiple dependencies with links between the dependencies and so on. So I think it's always simpler. I totally agree as well that there are some use cases where it's absolutely acceptable to have lower security requirements. And I think there's another category, which is actually we can accept to lose the data. The famous example is everything related to social network. You're not going to put on-chain all the pictures of all the world. It's just not possible. But it's kind of interesting, because here it's data that you can accept to lose. So if something happens, okay, it's lost. We've got the accounts, we've got some stuff on-chain. And this separation between, there's a part on-chain that is, we're sure that we're not going to lose it, and another part that we can accept to lose, it's fine. It's an intermediary step between the Validium where, okay, actually, very likely you will not lose it, but you have just a more complicated security analysis to do. So there are a little bit those three categories, in my opinion.
I think like people tend to think of this as like two like polar opposites, like you have on-chain and off-chain. But I think there are a lot of interesting models where things could be in between as well. Like you don't have to put all the data on-chain, or some things could go on one data like L1, and some things could go to some other DA layer, for example. A good example of this, like in Polygon Mining, for example, we have this distinction between like accounts and nodes. And you could say accounts are on L1, but nodes could go somewhere else. And what this means is like whatever is in your account is secured at the same level as Ethereum, but whatever is in flight has a slightly different security guarantee. So like if you're like an in-flight transaction may have a lower security guarantee, but usually don't transfer your like entire account worth at the same time. So that's just fun, interesting way. I know there's other designs like Volition, where you can have accounts live. Sometimes like users can move in the same account from one data availability model to another. There's I think Adamantium that Starknet guys like published at some point, where it could automatically switch from one model to another. So I think there's actually a very interesting space in between those polar opposites, where you have some data sometimes in one place and other times in another place, and the user decides where the data goes.
I agree. It's going to be probably we will all converge around these hybrid models, where every chain will not be strictly a rollup or a Validium, every zk chain. And I think everything is going to be zk in the future. But we will all have Volitions and even deeper things where users host part of their data for certain accounts. But there are clear use cases just for rollups, obviously you want to host most of your net worth in a rollup, because you want to derive full security from Ethereum without compromises. I think that's going to be the case for not just, I mean, most of the value on layer 1 and on the layer 2s are held by whales, by power users, who are smaller numbers, but they have a lot of value there. Like you think of all the liquidity provider, arbitrageurs, market makers, they hold their value in something that they absolutely need to rely on. So security is part of UX, if you want. So they will certainly be on the rollup. And if you think about the enterprises and institutions and banks, most of them will clearly prefer a Validium where they fully control the data, and that's just the reality. I don't like it, and I hope we will eventually build much better tools purely on chain that people own and fully control. But we will have a continuum of the systems, and the banks and institutions will have their assets issued in private Validiums where the privacy is provided out of the box, but it's still fully interoperable with the rest of the Ethereum ecosystem.
From my perspective, I think that for general purpose protocols, it just makes sense to be a rollup, just purely because if you have a lot of apps deploying on you, etc., minimizing third-party dependencies just makes sense. Because let's say, whereas if you're an app-specific chain, then I guess it depends on a specific use case. As you said, if the chain is securing billions of dollars, then I would say it's probably best if you continue functioning as a rollup. Whereas if it's like a gaming chain or something that has less value in it, like and is more towards geared towards storing data or just like making certain state transitions, it just makes more sense to use a Validium or an Optimium in case of an optimistic rollup, because for the vast majority of that data, you don't need the full security of Ethereum. It's perfectly fine to compromise a bit, but the trade-off is that you get significantly lower costs.
Completely agreed there. And I think, to me, it's a matter of essentially, it's not going to be practical for a while, at least to have everything be a rollup, and kind of fundamentally, like you need to compare to sort of what the next best option is. And I think that there are a lot of sort of DA approaches coming along that certainly, like everyone has said, would not want to be kind of the main kind of primary ecosystem rollup chains, but sort of fundamentally do enable use cases that don't exist otherwise. Just to sort of on kind of, I think there's another part of your question that we kind of went less into. One, just a minor disagreement. I think you said that over the last few months, there's been arguing over what's an L2. I would say over the last 5 years, it's the sort of definitional problem that's plagued us for a long time. And in my mind, on that front, the thing that I'd really love to continue to see more of is sort of less kind of like, it's very appealing to sort of have these sort of terminology buckets and kind of you're an L2, not an L2, you're a roll up, not a roll up, what have you. But I think the really kind of valuable thing is sort of the one level deeper of the kind of, what are the assumptions being made when I use this system? What am I trusting? And for example, sites like L2Beat that sort of dig into security frameworks, to me, are a kind of great resource there. Although there's this tension, which is, how much can we expect sort of end users and even application developers to actually sort of fully understand those details, which has sort of always been kind of a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I have the feeling that the data availability as a consensus, I mean, how much bandwidth can handle a consensus in data availability. This is a problem that's a relatively new problem, and we don't really know what are the limits there and what are at least the theoretical limits there. I know that the Ethereum Foundation for sharding and all, there are some theoretical problems, but I mean, it's very young. It's a very young problem. There is not many chains that has been designed just for data availability itself. So, but the feeling that I have, and this is just a personal opinion, is that in a few years, data availability is going to be very much solved. I mean, it's not going to be free because everything, I mean, it's the consensus is not going to be free, but it's going to be cheap enough or very cheap, so that the problem that maybe we are having now, where we store this data availability, I have the feeling that maybe in 4, 5, 6 years, 10 years, it's not going to be a huge problem as it may be right now. And here I would like to hear opinions on that.
I think one other thing that is interesting from data availability standpoint to me personally is ability to maybe push a lot of the data completely off chain into the user. So like only the commitment to the account or something, you know, someone's account state goes on chain, and the actual contents of a user's wallet and things like that are stored locally by the user. This enables like a lot of scalability. Obviously, it has its own, you know, pros and cons and trade-offs. But this is like when we think about you know, where does the data go? We always think some other chain, but I actually think that another option is just the user stores the data locally and is responsible for the data, and then just provides either zkP or data kind of proofs in a stateless way to the network whenever they need to execute a transaction.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Maybe just to pull things into a bit of a different direction. What should the layer 1 do, right? So there's been, I think, a lot of just ongoing discussion around, I mean, layer 1 making changes around like possibly, like changing some gas costs to be layer 2 friendly, possibly adding some pretty deep and complicated functionality, as like I know Justin Drake has been a fan of doing some of these things. Possibly, like changing in response to or kind of following behind, like some of the changes that are being innovated on layer 2s, maybe other things. Like what are some ways that like you guys think that the L1 should continue evolving in order to make the L2 world continue to be to progress as smoothly as possible?
I will put two things. One is fast finality, which is not exactly a new topic, but I think it will secure much more the rollups. It will be much better for everybody. And maybe the technology as well could be reused in the layer 2. All the progresses on fast finality on the layer 1 can be very interesting for the layer 2. And on a totally different level, I will put at the EVM, I think it's important linked to actually account abstraction to add some cryptography primitives. There are a lot of EIP around that will allow many more signature schemes or many more complicated cryptography at the account abstraction level.
I think there's a number of areas that are awesome to see. I'm glad. I appreciate that finality was the first call out, just because I think that's a really exciting one. It's probably the most obvious one probably to people that kind of is exciting is expanded data capacity, and obviously we have our kind of dream final state of full dank sharding and kind of a bunch of interesting work going on in pure DAS, which is sort of relatively new to the discussion as sort of another intermediate state. And then I think the last area I would call out, and I think one that's sort of probably more useful to optimistic rollups than to ZK rollups, although I think incredibly useful in general, is censorship resistance. In that right now Ethereum has relatively weak censorship resistance guarantees, and there's kind of between inclusion lists and personally I'm kind of pretty excited and interested in embedded PDS and kind of various things which would get Ethereum to a much harder guarantee there.
I would add here ossification. I think it's important that in order to build, if we want to build really L2s that are decentralized, we need L1 to be decentralized. And for that, I think that L1 should be ossified. I know that this is not something that happened from one day on the other. Ethereum is not finished yet, and there is still a lot of things to do before doing ossification, but something that's really important to happen at some point.
One thing, if I could request or shape from a layer one is I think the biggest challenge of blockchains is around the area of, let's call it broadness, or I just prefer the term broadness to decentralization because I don't like double negation. So decentralization means not centralized, so centralized bad, decentralized good. So I prefer the term broadness. So blockchains are ultimately all about broadness, maximal broadness, so that there's a very wide basis. It's related a little bit to what Jody spoke about, censorship resistance, and it's a constant battle because there are natural forces and incentives that tend to centralization, and then what we need from the layer one of Ethereum is, I think, things related to tokenomics and incentives that would just keep on broadening all the time the base of operators and stakeholders in a way. Now, it's a very hard challenge because there will always be counter forces of centralization. But the one thing that should be best done, it would be focusing on that, and then compatibility with, by the EVM being the first Turing complete machine, it already allows all of this, this whole family of L2s is all because of Vitalik, your vision of like a single Turing complete machine. So if the one thing I would try as much to push forward from the layer one is the broadness, and it's related to the incentives and tokenomics. I don't know how to change it in a way, but I would, so that it, a larger part of humanity has a stake in it, and it's ever more broad. And at some point, maybe we solve proof of humanity so that people can actually, we'll get closer to one individual, one vote, or have elements of that without relying on nation states. So that would be the area I'd like.
Amazing. So I saw Brian from RISC Zero just joined, and I feel like RISC Zero is another one of these newer members to the family that a lot of people have probably not yet had a chance to hear about. So maybe and talk about what are you guys up to, and what are you guys looking forward to being up to in 2024?
Yeah, I can also sort of answer that last question. And I think, something that would be really useful from our perspective is just to make it easier to integrate zero knowledge proofs onto the L1 in any manner. So if that looks like GROS16 precompiles, or, even precompiles that support more Stark-like systems, that would be great. And then obviously, dank sharding is going to be huge, I think, for all of us. But yeah, what we're focused on right now is really getting our verifier onto mainnet so that people can use zero knowledge proofs produced by our system on Ethereum proper. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. Any final words from any of you guys?
We need account abstraction, please. Have you tried sending transactions recently? Oh my god. It's so bad. We need to fix it.
Really? I thought sending transactions is amazing compared to 4 years ago. Remember back in the bad old days when you had to send a transaction and EIP 1559 did not exist, and so you had to wait potentially 5 minutes or an hour for the thing to even get included. And then
That's true.
But yes, we do need account abstraction.
But you have to know how to use a wallet. I think if you know how to use a wallet today, it's great compared to 4 years ago. If you don't know how to use a wallet, it's a whole mess. There's so much complexity.
I definitely think of that as as a major like obstacle in terms of when will my friends start using crypto instead of making fun of me for doing it.
Next biggest stage right now is 4844. So I think that all of us will have a lot of work there. So
Yeah, 4844. Let's see it arriving. That's going to be really great. And yeah.
I would like a bit of an increase in the gas limit for the L1 because that will make our lives a bit easier in terms of decentralization, because I have a feeling that for all of us, once we try to decentralize the costs of publishing the batches and finalizing batches on chain is going to increase. Therefore, a gas increase will help us with that.
I want to see more kind of multi-chain L2 native wallet development in general, just sort of managing the complexity of multiple networks in a way that makes it less confusing for users.
I would say 4844.
I'll just say I want to see more of this gathering in this format, in broader formats, coordinating, speaking together, and making peace with L2s. And with this, guys, I need to unfortunately depart now. So it was a pleasure seeing all of you.
Yep. Okay. So we met on
time.
land, we met in the cloud. So maybe our next one's going to be in a swimming pool. Okay. Yeah. No. Thank you so much. Yeah. Anyone else have anything? Otherwise.
Thank you for coming on and hosting.
Yeah. Thanks for hosting.
No. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining.
Abdel, do you want to say any? As the coordinator.
Thank you thank you, Vitalik, because you accepted this invitation very last minute. So Vitalik actually accepted like 2 hours ago. He did not know anything about the event, so thank you for that. And thank you very much to all the participants. I hope we can do another edition in sometime later in the year, and also some physical editions too. I think we can do, probably we will all be at HCC or something like that. So maybe we can do something in person. That can be amazing.
Amazing.
And let's make peace together.
Yep. Let's make peace and peace out and keep peace back in not too far in the future.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.